Hello and welcome to my live stream on your spiritual journey. That is one of my Facebook groups. The other is Spiritism in the Spirit World Around Us. That's Facebook group is where we talk just mainly about Spiritism. Here it's about different things. Spiritism hopefully should be one of your main philosophies, doctrines to cover, but we also allow other people to post on this website. So this is January 14th, Tuesday, and I am talking about near-death experiences. And they're very interesting. What I do is I do in this book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, I interpret near-death experiences using what I have learned through the writings of many Spiritist mediums. Now, Spiritist mediums are ones who believe in Spiritism and talk to higher spirits, and they communicate to us, giving us more information about the spirit realm. Spiritism was codified by Allan Kardec in the 1850s. And let me bring up his first book. This is the Spirit's book, and it's amazing how many people I've talked to lately who've said, I found the Spirit's book and it answers my questions. It's hard to believe. The same thing happened to me. Some people, of course, read it and it's a bit too complicated, maybe, or they just doesn't. Everyone has different learning processes, and that's why I've written my books, is to accumulate information from different Spiritist books and to give you information about Spiritism, because it really explains why we're on Earth. It goes and tells us what heaven is like. Tells us also what the lower level, the umbral, what they call in Portuguese, and a type of, purgatory, what they call the dark abyss. There is no eternal punishment, like in some writings you've heard of. So, yes, Spiritism tells us so much, and that's why I decided to interpret near-death experiences through what Spiritism tells us, because it gives us the context of what people have seen, and I have not found it to be an error at all. And in fact, the people I've talked to afterwards, in fact, this is one of them, was B's NDE trip around the universe. I answered many of his questions. Another person who I talked to, who went to heaven and met a very high spirit full of love, I answered many of her questions and her doubts. So I believe, now I could be wrong, of course, and that's up for everyone to judge for themselves, that Spiritism will give you the context, and that NDEs, near-death experiences, are really like a vice principal taking you out of class and saying, you need to do better in school. You're failing. Or, you need to do this. Come on. Get your head straight. Do better. I believe that NDEs are all for a purpose. They are not random at all. They are there to tell you, like, okay, time to get into shape. And most people tell you that in their NDEs. They will see things, they go, oh, well, I'm immortal, or I'm on a mission, or I have this to do, or I have to take care of this family member, or if I'm not here, woe to them. I will be responsible for their failures. So all these things are brought to us, and we're able to be enlightened because of what Allan Kardec did in the 1850s. Now, I'm going to go that far into it. I'll let you read about Allan Kardec. If you'd like to see more about him in a movie is created, it's on Netflix called Kardec, Kardec. If you have Netflix, it's a wonderful movie. It will tell you about how Kardec came to list a series of 1,019 questions to spirits. He was not a medium himself. In fact, he didn't believe in that stuff until the answers to the questions started, and the answers to many other things started to become too real. So then he finally determined what was happening. So let's get into it and talk about B's NDE. And it's really, he had a whole trip around the universe. So he really didn't have what we would say a clinical NDE experience. He had a near NDE, a near-death experience, or maybe an out-of-body experience, we should say. So, and I've talked to him personally, and he's also had a YouTube video on this. So he had been praying for guidance, and he had a date to be baptized, and he wanted to make sure he was making the correct decision. And he went to sleep, and he was awoken by an angel next to his bed. Now, I first got his vision from the NDERF.org, which is the Near-Death Experiences Research Foundation website, which contains many accounts of NDEs experienced by people of every country, language, and culture. Now, I'd like to say is after I published this article on his, and now it's in my book, Spirits Talk to Us, he contacted me and we talked about a lot. So it's very interesting. And he said that, and he actually said that some of the things I wrote in there, he didn't, and I had made guesses, and you'll hear this later in my talk, that the people he talked to said, yes, you were right. And I found that out later. So very nice person. So let's start. So he got the call. He went to sleep, and an angel woke him up, in essence. And the angel told me it was my guardian angel, and the reason that it had come to me is because my prayers had been answered for asking for guidance about my adult baptism that I was going to go through the next weekend. My guardian angel was the most awesome sight to me, with its wings spread out. So be it asked for guidance, and now it would be presented to him. In reading his account, he never said he had a near-death experience, no medical emergency or brush with death that could have triggered his vision he had that night. Many could say he made up all of this, but when you examine what he was told, the details of the spirit universe, his relation to the spirit world, and many other salient points, they all correspond to what has been revealed by spiritist literature, whether by Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, or by Francisco, also named Chico, C. Xavier is a nickname, whose psychograph written, when I say psychograph, is written on the direction of a spirit, more than 450 books, almost close to 500 now, after they kept publishing books after his death in 2002, I believe. And all the information written by others, Allan Kardec and Chico Xavier and other spiritist mediums, they detail information that we on earth need to know to live our lives as God intends us. Not once does B mention the doctrine of Spiritism, nor hint that he had any knowledge of it. But the doctrine is there in every paragraph, and it starts with his paraspirit hovering above the bed. This is what he wrote. I realized that I was in a corner of my room, looking slightly down across the bottom of my bed, and I could hear a voice coming from behind me, but I could not see anyone around, and remember feeling a bit taken back by the voice because I could not see who or where it was coming from. The voice told me that I was safe and in good company. I had a very strong, soothing, magnetic feeling of love and compassion come over me. A bright orb-shaped sphere came from behind me on my right side and then moved in front of me. The spirit light changed its shape and appeared before me as a genderless angel. Now let's stop there for a second. When we see a high spirit and it's higher than us, a spirit radiates the love of God, and actually, I should say not radiate. I should say it reflects. That's what spirits have told us. The higher they are, the more they reflect what's in the normal atmosphere of all the universes, the love of God. And then for us being here on this low level, it's very bright and we can't see. That is one reason why we think we see wings. But if he was at that same level as that angel, that guardian angel who came to visit him, he would have seen a normal looking person. But as it was fuzzy because it's so bright, right? When you see something bright, you can't make out the shapes. And sometimes you can barely make out the facial shapes. It depends on the level of the spirit, and also depends on how the spirit has tried to modify themselves so they're not so bright. And in fact, most of the time when spirits come to us, we can't see them because they haven't modified themselves at all for them to able to be appear in our physical universe. And in fact, if a high level spirit went down to a lower level of either even heaven or the umbra, which is the lower zone, which is the area around the earth up to the level of heaven, or the dark abyss, which is under the earth, they would not be seen by discarnate spirits either until they would themselves bring on more matter, right? Because the higher the spirit, the higher the ratio of energy to matter, meaning they have more energy, less matter. The lower the spirit, even down on the lower levels, the umbral, has more matter than energy. Of course, we here on Earth are mostly composed of matter, but we do have energy too. So it's all that ratio of energy to matter. So that is why many people say angels have wings, is because it's the glow makes it look like they do have wings. So then they said, and also he said it came as like an orb, which again is really what is the major thing, is that a spirit can be seen just as an orb until they can but they also can put it on their spirit body, right? And the spirit decides what clothes they look like, and the spirit decides how they want to appear. Their character, their personality dictates how they look. That's why throughout the ages in mythology, right, when people seen these monsters on the ground and purgatory and things like that, they see these misshapen forms and shapes of people, but they are misshapen because they believe they are misshapen. They live not a good life until they decide to change their character and attitude. Then they will rise and ascend into heaven and look nice as they should appear. So the spirit light changed its shape and appeared before me as a genderless angel, he said. Then he goes on to say, I looked to my right, and as I was at the foot of my bed, to see my body in bed sleeping and still breathing as normal. I was a little daunted by that. I really took notice that I was floating about 1.5 meters off the ground. I noticed that the angel was talking to me, but without using its mouth to speak the words. At this point, I knew we were conversing telepathically through consciousness. So there's a lot to unpack here. So let's talk about that. B saw his body. His physical self never woke, only his spirit. He didn't notice a silvery cord attaching his spirit to his body. Keep in mind, as he roams the universe, the cord will stretch for an infinite length. We on Earth are made up of 3 distinct parts. First is our spirit, that ball of energy which contains all of the memories of our past lives, down to each microsecond, what we saw, heard, felt, smelled, and thought, even what others around us were thinking. Next is our physical body, that organic machine which is manufactured inside our mother's body, and while inside the womb, our spirit merges with the fetus. Our dense human form is a poor receptacle for our spirit. It is meant to be, for in human form, we are destined to be exposed to 1,000 distractions, all intended to train us for future trials. That is what is so important for people to remember. Let me finish the third part. The paraspirit, which is the third part of us, is the connection from our spirit to our body. The paraspirit invisibly surrounds our body and transmits our thoughts. Now, let me see if I have a picture of that, because a picture is worth, there we go, let me bring this up. So you notice, and of course this is espirito, these are captioned in Portuguese. So espirito is the spirit, paraspirit, and then the body, corporal. Now notice that B said he saw an orb. Here we are, which is the spirit. Now the paraspirit is a covering, it's energy. But what happens is when we incarnate, our spirit connects to the body. So that paraspirit will cover the body and actually communicate with every cell within our body. It's like an invisible diving suit. And that will always connect us to our spirit. So what happens is whatever memories we have goes through that pipeline, like an air tube through a diver up to the surface, right? Which is a good analogy because we are here on Earth in this dense atmosphere and our body's heavy. And and I can't tell you how many times in NDEs and even in Spiritism books, they say, oh, I felt so good getting rid of this dense body. I felt so light and free. And here we are, we're walking, like heavy burdened animals. But so that's why, the spirit itself, we are so much more superior in our spirit life and intellectually. And of course, we are in great health and there's nothing wrong with us. So no matter if you've seen some poor disabled person, like very disabled, let's say mentally, that person in spirit is just as good or better than as far as maturity or level of spirit than any of us. So all of these things in physical bodies are temporary, and they're there to help people learn lessons. They are there to help. So everything that you see that people have and in your own body is there for a purpose. And I'd also like to say is that for those of you who are probably spiritually somewhat mature and you've lived in heaven before as a spirit, where you spend most of your time, you were probably part of that team who decided your whole plan for your life. And that plan included what your body would look like. And therefore, don't get mad at your body. You selected it. And and many times I've read in spiritist literature, people said, I don't want to look beautiful. And I've read where a woman said, no, I don't want to look beautiful. I don't want to have too much charm and magnetism, because in my life, I'm here for a spiritual purpose, not to give myself pleasure. So think about that. So anyway, here's the spirit, the paraspirit, and the body. So therefore, we retain, also I'll tell you something else interesting I read the other day, is that the paraspirit is also our translator. So every incarnation you've had, when you've spoken a different language, that language will be stored in your paraspirit. And therefore, when you are a spirit and you hear someone talking Tagalog, let's say you were in the Philippines or some other dialect, you could understand it if you were at once incarnated during that, in that country or in that area where they spoke that language. So again, remember, but we don't remember our past lives. We only receive a limited amount of data from our spirit. And there's a reason for this. And the reason for this is we're not on Earth to become intellectual giants. I want to tell everybody right now is all spirits are created equal. They all have the same capacity to be as intellectually strong and advanced as any other spirit. Unlike on Earth, where we are limited physically, right, and whatever, into, we say all men are equal, but created equal. Well, hopefully what we're saying is they're under the law, under the eyes of the law. But in the spirit world, we really are created equal. So whenever you see anybody and you think, that person's stupid, well, they may be, to your mind, not so bright in this life, but that could have been on purpose. That could have been saying, no, you've used your intelligence not in a good way. We're going to limit that in this life and see if you can change your emotion. Because, as I said before, we're not here to become geniuses. We're not here to get all the money in the world. We're here to reform our personality and our character to become better people. We're here to remove the primitive emotions, hate, envy, thirst for revenge, and replace them with good emotions, love, charity, fraternity, and honesty. Now let's talk again a little bit about the paraspirit. The paraspirit has a built-in timer. It connects our spirit to our body until the date when we are due to return to the spirit world. The date may move out according to our deeds and actions, but we are not allowed to end our life early. If we do, the paraspirit persists in connecting to the physical body even as our spirit is free and our body decomposes. and we are not allowed to ascend to heaven until our agreed upon expiration date. Now, there are exceptions to this. You know, as an example, a poor woman commits suicide because of just complete torture and horrible, treatment by a boyfriend or husband, and then those things are looked at differently. But still, as a general speaking, a terrible idea. You don't solve anything by getting out of your physical body early. Your job is to stay here until your lesson is finished, till that bell rings and you can finish that class and go to the next class. So let's go on to what B states, because here's the interesting. He's very interesting what he says. So next, he says, his angel took him to upper regions of hell to demonstrate the contrast between the consequences of a life lived in the pursuit of attempting to improve yourself by learning to love others and be fraternal and honest with all, as opposed to taking what you can for your own selfish reasons. Now, he doesn't describe hell in his account, but he did describe it to me verbally later, and it is what Spiritism his account corresponds to what Spiritism tells what hell is. The area around the earth, just below the surface, is the higher region of hell. The lower one travels the worse the conditions. Hell is not, I want to make sure everyone knows this, is not a sentence for eternity, but one where people who have lived a dishonorable or a wholly materialistic life journey to after death. It is a place where a person lives amongst those similar to him or herself. What you have sown, you reap in hell. Now, escaping what be called hell is straightforward, and we don't call it hell because it's not eternal. But it's not easy. To flee that region, which we call the lower zone, to flee that region where others treat you like you have treated others in your earthly life, you must transform your attitude from selfishness to selflessness, from hate and anger to love and compassion. Once higher spirits detect your willingness and desire to change, you'll be assisted and guided out of the abyss. Now, I don't remember what B said about hell, and I'm not sure exactly what he said now, that I can't recall completely. But I will tell you what Spiritism tells us. That people are placed there, just like I said, and they're placed there because of the law of affinity. And what is the law of affinity? The law of affinity is like gathers with like. So if you are a petty criminal, not a horrible, like a murderer or something like that, you'll be around other people, petty, selfish, sarcastic like you are. Now, you've seen movies where people like just wander aimlessly, zombie-like in the lower zones. Well, that is there. But there's cities, there's towns, there's organization in hell, in the lower zone, I should say. I should stop using the word hell. Spiritism doesn't like that word. There's organizations, there's factories, there are mines. There are mines where people mine iron and other minerals so they can make swords. People will still fight wars in those lower zones and in the dark abyss. But the difference is, on Earth we have mature and not so mature souls living together, and hopefully the mature souls are people that they can look up to and they can try to pattern themselves after. Whereas in the lower zone, in the dark abyss, you don't have that. You have everyone kind of being very mean, not nice people. Now, that is harder for them to change their character where they are in that environment, but they do. And each one of them also, once they decide that they don't like living with people like themselves and they start changing themselves, the spirit world will bring them out of that position and help them rise. So let's go traveling beyond Earth. So from the depth of the earth, B is taken to the higher atmosphere of Earth. Then the angel tells B the great revelation that concerns all of us. This is what the angel told B. Once we are at the very atmosphere of Earth, the angel said to me, The reasons humans come to Earth, it's to evolve their spirit. The angel told me that it's all a learning experience. Well, it's all a learning experience. This is, in a nutshell, is the reason we suffer through life with good and bad times. This is exactly what Spiritism has told us since the 1850s. And if you look for hints in the Bible, where one cannot, rise until you're born again. No, being born again doesn't mean baptism. Being born again means going through life after life, learning to be a better person. So, and this is why right now, because we live on the planet of atonement, and I'll get onto that later in this talk of different levels of planet. But since we are on this planet of atonement, meaning that we reincarnate, we have to pay for our past wrongs. This is why bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. This is the reason for injustice, the reason for poverty, inequality, corruption, and prejudice. Imagine if you were forced to live in a school with mostly uncontrollable 7th and 8th graders, no staff or teachers present. It would degrade into a nightmare in a blink of an eye. Actually, you don't have to imagine it. This is practically where you're living. As we look upon that chaotic school full of unruly children, this is how the spirit world looks upon us. Through our own behavior, we have made the earth what it is. All is not lost. For we are not abandoned and left to fend for ourselves. Invisible to us, there is an army of spirits watching and guiding our every move, examining how we are proceeding in our custom-tailored lesson plans. The Supreme Intelligence fully realizes we are not able to absorb the lesson of the light in just one life. To internalize the need for love and compassion for all takes many, many lives. Hence, after each life, our grades are compiled and deeds taken into account to create the plan for the next life, where we will have to live on the other side of whatever ignoble act we committed, so we may comprehend the true pain we caused. I was reading a great account, and it's about the life of Father Germain. I don't know what century he did. He wouldn't say what century. It was probably 15th or 16th century, I believe. And he was a priest, and he knew that. He said he intuitively knew when he was a priest that given the inequality and the way men and women and children are treated and how terrible or good they have their lives, that it's not fair for God to give a person one life in order to rise to heaven. He intuitively knew that reincarnation was real, and he intuitively knew that we are immortal. And I think many people have done that. In fact, I've seen studies where 25% of people who profess the Christian belief in reincarnation. And we believe in that because that is part of something that was given to us as part of our conscience, our set of divine laws that each one of us have. That's why we feel guilty when we do something wrong. And the higher maturity of spirit you are, the more guilty you feel about doing wrong things. If you're a primitive spirit, you don't really have learned to listen to that filter, your conscience, and you don't feel that guilty. You will in life after life, because the spirit world will direct you into that path for you to understand love and forgiveness. But primitive spirits, they will kill, they will take, right? Like the primitive people on Earth 40,000 years ago, eat or be eaten. They just did what they could, followed their instinct more than their conscience. But through successive lives, they learned to be better. We have all lived in that primitive place. It may not have been on Earth. It may have been on a different planet. We have all been there. And therefore, when you see people who you think are horrible, barbaric people, they usually are more primitive spirits, and that you should, doesn't mean you have to take them to your house or you have to not have them go to prison, but you should, in your mind, at least love them and take pity on them. Why? Because you have been at that level before. You have been just as ignorant and mean in some past life as they are in their present life. And this is where the guardian angels and the high spirits who love us so much, and why they love us, is because angels weren't made by God. Angels are us. They are trained by the gift of God and by the gift of free will. We too shall all be angels in some capacity or not. We'll be high spirits. This is how we should think. And the more we start, acting like a guardian angel, a high spirit, a loving person who doesn't have to be a pushover, but at least we can focus, right? We can use our indignation when something's wrong, but we don't have to let out the primitive emotions of hate guide our behavior. The more we start acting like that, the faster we shall rise in earth, into heaven, I should say. So therefore, I'd like to say is that the spirit world knows that this one life isn't going to be our everything, and we're going to go to hell because we did something wrong, or we're going to go here, or we're going to go to heaven because we've been good all our life. No, they look at you throughout your lives, and you will go to heaven if you've been, mainly a good person. But when you're in heaven, there's different levels of heaven, and you will keep coming back and perfecting yourself, right? Because that is our goal, all to be a perfection. And the Supreme Intelligence fully realizes that we're not able to absorb this lesson of light in just one life, right? We need to internalize the need for love and compassion for all. That takes many lives. Hence, after each life, as I said, our grades are compiled, deeds taken into account to create the plan for the next life. That's how reincarnation works. That's the process of reincarnation. We are on this life now. This life's blueprint, this predetermination of our life, and believe me, that came as a great shock to me. I believe only primitive people believe in predetermination. How wrong I was when I learned that things happened to me that were predetermined, that happened, that was told to me by my wife like 17 years before we met. And then she told me that, and then like a year after, things happened. So that's how I found Spiritism. If there's predetermination, there has to be a reason for it. And now I know. Now I know that the spirit world is all around us. So let me finish the process of incarnation. Our blueprint on this life is taken from our actions in our past lives. As we live this life, we are creating our blueprint for the next life. So if you can act as well and good as you can, your next life will have the least amount of drama and tragedy. And in fact, there was this great section in Planetary Transition and by Divaldo Franco. Another, and you can, Planetary Transition by Divaldo Franco, he has it in English, he's originally in Portuguese. And they're talking about spirits from another planet, from a higher level, a more advanced planet, coming to Earth to help us. They all came and volunteered to help us in missions, to help our planet go to the next step. And and then the person there was like, well, what kind of lives are they going to lead? And he was told, these people who come to volunteer are not going to have the major tragedies. They're not going to have the major illnesses, cancer, right? They're not going to be in a car accident where they're going to be hurt for a long time. They're going to have the typical sicknesses, measles, colds, whatever. But they won't have the great tragedies because they've atoned for everything they've had to atone for. So think about that as you're going through our life. Now, let's go to the next. This is his journey into the lower zone, or actually what he saw. B tells us that he saw lower spirits, and his angel told him that they are unable to rise above a certain level beyond the earth. The area between the crust of the earth and the lower level of heaven is called the lower zone, as I stated earlier. And this is what he wrote. So he did talk about this a little bit. This is what he wrote. Just on the outside of our atmosphere, I noticed some evil or bad spirits looking down on Earth. The angel told me that these evil spirits cannot harm me because of my love for the Lord. I am protected. I remember one of the evil spirits looking over at us, but I knew it was too afraid to approach. The angel said that this is the furthest the evil spirits can come out from Earth because they were bound here. So let's talk about the lower zone for a minute. Andre Luis, who woke up there after his death on the operating room table, and Andre Luis wrote a series of wonderful books. It starts with No Solar. In fact, No Solar is also a movie. You might find it as Astral City or Celestial City. You can rent it. It is in Portuguese, but it has English subtitles. It's well worth it. So Andre Luis, on his first book called Our Home or No Solar in Portuguese, describes what he woke up to in the lower zone, and that's the space from the Earth's crust up to the bottom level of heaven. That's what he said. Actually, I felt like a prisoner trapped behind dark bars of horror. With my hair on end, my heart pounding, and scared stiff, I often cried out like a madman. I begged for mercy and clamored against the painful despondency that had taken hold of my spirit. But when the loud cries didn't fall on an implacable silence, they were answered by lamenting voices even more pitiful than my own. At other times, sinister laughter rent the prevailing silence. I thought that some unknown companion out there was a prisoner of insanity. Diabolical forms, ghastly faces, animal-like countenances appeared from time to time, increasing my panic. So it doesn't seem like a nice place, does it? The lower zone is composed of many areas, not just a strange dark dimension that exists parallel to our own, but also right here on the surface of the Earth. In the book Memoirs of a Suicide by Yvonne A. Pierre, the main protagonist of the book, Camilo Castelo Branco, who committed suicide when he was going blind because of syphilis, describes what it was like awakening in the graveyard where he was buried. Sobbing uncontrollably, I bent over the grave that held my wretched remains. Contorting myself in terrifying convulsions of pain and rage, wallowing in a crisis of diabolical fury, I understood that I had committed suicide, that I was in the grave, but that nevertheless I continued to live and suffer even more, so much more than before, superfluity as similarly, so much more than before my cowardly and thoughtless act. Hence, Camilo, while in his body 6 feet underground, was deteriorating, felt he was alive, with all the loneliness, pain, and suffering it entails. Walking on the face of the earth while incarnate visitors to familiar graves passed through him, oblivious to his sufferings. Camilo then left the cemetery, trying to ascertain what was this world he had died into, and this is what he wrote. I continued to roam around aimlessly, feeling my way along the street, unacknowledged by friends and admirers, a poor blind man humiliated in the afterlife thanks to the dishonor of having committed suicide, a beggar in the spirit world, famished in the darkness, a tortured wandering ghost, without a home, without shelter in the immense and infinite world of spirits, exposed to deplorable dangers, hounded by malefic entities, criminals of the spirit world, who love to use hateful traps to capture individuals going through tormenting situations like mine in order to enslave them, and increase the obsessing hordes that destroy Earth's society and ruin men and women, submitting them to the vilest temptations with their deadly influence. So, if you don't, to try and understand this completely, the lower zone is really all around us. As Chico liked to say, the lower zone starts at the tip of your nose, right? Teeming with life, and it's not of the benevolent kind. There are good spirits around us, but there are also bad spirits around us. I shouldn't say bad, I should say ignorant spirits. And it's very interesting that our rational minds refuse to consider that this exists, since we could neither see nor touch it. Right? We're in this culture, unless you can prove it. Oh, you haven't proven that to me. I don't believe in it. And I don't blame people. I've been the same way. My belief in the spirit world has been proven indirectly through my finding out that my life was predetermined. because what was foretold to me was such specificity that it would be almost completely improbable that this would happen. Could be possible. I'm not going to say it could be possible, but immensely improbable. So, of course, now we in this rational culture, we all say we're in rational culture, we refuse to consider this going to exist. Although there's all these things around us, near-death experiences. There's been studies on near-death experiences where people say, oh yeah, this was in the operating room, that was in the operating room, that you, doctor, told this to the nurse. And of course, that person was out the whole time. How could that happen? People, and of course, we dismiss it, right? We dismiss these little data points because they don't fit. But that's why we're on Earth, is we are here on Earth to take that, oh, you know, I remember what Aunt Mary said, and she talked to my mother as she was doing this, or my grandmother died and my mother talked to her. And I mean, these little data points that we would just dismiss, we need to look at these things in our own rationality, decide what that will make us believe. Don't just say, I believe in science, because science is still pretty immature. And any scientist, real scientists will say, we know so much less than we think we know. And there's so much more to know. So, therefore, the lower zone is all around us. And exist it does, and it's there for a purpose. While we must go through trials in our physical life in order to learn the valuable lessons assigned to us, once we end our studies, does everyone pass? No. No matter how pitiful our performance was, we aren't in a local kindergarten class where each participant gets a ribbon. God is love, and love can be tough love, the love that holds us to a high standard, a raised bar that ensures only those who meet the minimum criteria are allowed to enter the higher planes. Now, thankfully, all who reside and wallow in criminality or mindless materialism with their sights set on earth are rescued in time. But they are in the lower zone. They're not allowed. You have to earn your right by being a good person, not a perfect. You don't have to be a saint. You don't have to give all your money away. You can live a decent life, try to be honest, try to do more good than harm. You don't have to be perfect at all to rise in heaven. But you have to want to learn, and you have to want to try to be better. Your attitude is extremely important. And therefore, even if you're in the lower zone, eventually you will be allowed to go up when you change your attitude, as I said. So all spirits are given the required period and assistance to slowly modify their behavior and attitudes in the lower zone to begin look upwards and work themselves out of the pit and into their rightful place in the celestial city. Now, so B was being raised, all the way went down, and he was being raised through the lower zone to come up to the heavens. So as B's angel took him higher and higher beyond the atmosphere of Earth and into the solar system, he could detect the waves of emotional feelings that came from the planets he passed. This is what he said. While we were in our solar system, I could feel musical notes coming from all the planets as they spun on their axis. Earth gave off a very beautiful high-pitched vibration, and I could feel Saturn right through the solar system. Saturn gave off the strongest notes. It was pulsating with a low bass vibration that felt so soothing. Interestingly enough, Spiritism tells us Saturn is one of the advanced planets. Now, when I first read the Spirit's book, and they said, oh, there's life on Saturn, I said, the Spirit's book doesn't know what you're talking about. Well, Spirit's book and Genesis and all the other Spiritist literature said there's life everywhere. There's life everywhere throughout the universe. And of course, when they say that, it's not just our universe, universes and spirit universe. And even in the physical universe, we are just one of the physical universes. Saturn, Mars, Venus, the same planet could have the capability to give life in a different combination, a different dimension within one of the physical universes. And therefore, he heard those notes. And then the lower, and then that vibration and those strongest notes came from an advanced planet. So, and those vibrations come as a result of the type of life which resides there. So, again, I'll say the first question to come in anyone's rational mind is, how can there be life throughout the solar system? We've had satellites explore every planet and many moons from the sun to Pluto. No sign of intelligent life has presented itself. But life is prevalent all around us. Spirits, high and low, are constantly within our midst. They exist on a different plane, a dimension we can't detect. We are told by spirits we can only detect 1/8 of what is around us. If we can't see the spirits on the lower zone all around us, we certainly can't see different dimensions of life on other planets or throughout our physical universe. Neither our telescopes nor electronic exploration devices have a capacity to peer beyond our dimension as yet. In the book Spiritist Review of 1858, which is a compilation of Spiritist magazines edited by Allan Kardec, we are told of the relative level of life on Saturn. This is what is said. Mercury and Saturn come after Earth. The numerical superiority of the good spirit gives them predominance over the inferior spirits, resulting in a more perfect social order, less selfish relationships, and therefore happier living conditions. So to understand the above, one must understand the progression of planets. So let's talk about the progression of planets. In the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec, in chapter 3, there's an explanation of the different worlds that spirits will inhabit during their long trek towards purification. And I'll present just a quick summary here, but in my book, Explore Your Destiny, since your life path is predetermined. Let me find that book for you. And I have, well, I may not have it here. Oh, it's not here. So anyway, it's called Explore Your Destiny, since your life's path is mostly predetermined. There is a fuller explanation of what I'm going to tell you here. So here are the different levels of planets. And of course, you know, these are broad strokes, and there's levels within levels, but this is kind of a summary. This is a primitive world, intended for the first incarnations of the human soul. A soul meaning someone that is now is able to be given the gift of free will. The beings that inhabit them are, to a certain extent, rudimentary. They have the human form, but are devoid of any beauty. Their instincts are not tempered by any sentiment of refinement or benevolence, or by any notions of right or wrong. Brute force is the only law. With no industry or inventions, they spend life in conquest of food. The earth was once a primitive world. Now, the world of trial and expiation, also called a planet of atonement. You are living on this world. There is more evil present than good. Now you know why life is not easy, because it's not supposed to be while you are reincarnated on the planet Earth. But we're moving towards the next level. This is what Spiritism and also many spiritualists have said. We're feeling like there's a vibrational change, and they're correct. There is beginning to be, we're just going to start the journey. I say it's going to take 1,000 years. Other people say less, right? Who knows? This is just my theory. But Spiritism, they have said we have started the journey. How long that is up to us, I believe. It's called a regenerative world, where souls still have something to expiate and pay off some debt of a past wrong, and may absorb new strength by resting from the fatigue of struggle. There's still evil, but much reduced. The good outweighs the evil. Consequently, there's no motive for hatred or discord. Now, after the regenerative world, there's a higher world. There's a happy world, where good outweighs evil. On happy worlds, we still retain our human form, although the senses are more acute. After that, there's heavenly or divine worlds, where good reigns completely. All inhabitants are purified spirits. There is no evil. So hence, Saturn, where we heard these wonderful vibrations, is a world on a level above the Earth and had a more pleasant vibration. Planets where there are a majority of mature spirits who live selfishly and strive to be kind and considerate to all contain people who are happier and more content. One day, as the human race grows and advances, the earth too will become a better place to live. And I talk about this, how the earth will rise, in my book, The 1,000-Year March. But the book here we're talking now is The Spirit World Talks to Us. Now, I'm gone almost an hour. I'm going to do this as part one. I will do next week or the week after. I will do part B, or part two, I should say, not part one. Part two of this, talking about B's NDE trip around the universe. I believe it's going to be fascinating for those who want to see, because B will start going to different places in the universe. He'll have revelations sent to him, what's going to happen in the future. But let me talk first about planet Earth and how we will ascend. We will start ascending when there's going to be more good, mature souls rising on this earth than primitive souls who are full of ignorance and meanness. And therefore, we all have to play our part to become a better person and to be an example to other people around us. I know that's not easy. We don't live in a black and white world. We have to work. We have to work for a living. Some of us work for corporations. We don't like what we're doing. I've been there. I've done that. We just have to do the best we can. We have to feed our family. You know, we can't abandon all our worldly goods. We have to pay the mortgage, etc. But we can still try to be the best we can under those circumstances. So if you're interested in it, I urge you to buy my book, The Spirit World Talks to Us, if you're interested about near-death experiences, and explore my blog, NW Spiritism. Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the bell, comment on it, send it to other people. If you like, share my YouTube videos or BitChute. I've also loaded everything on the BitChute because one cannot trust YouTube any longer. So please do what you can. Study for your own good. Don't have to buy my books. The Spirits book that I showed you earlier, and I'll show it to you again. The Spirits book is available on PDF, so it doesn't cost you anything. You can look up The Spirits book, Allan Kardec. You'll find all of his books really on PDF. That's how I found it. I didn't spend a penny, and I read the PDFs, and then I bought the books because then I wanted to read them more, underline. I asked questions, and I studied. You know, I still read it over and over again. So it's a wonderful book. So I urge everyone to study why you're here on this earth. Spiritism tells us so much. What it does, it should make you feel better on where you're at. You can be discerning at first because you understand that you're this human and this going through this predetermined obstacle course. But what's awaiting you is fabulous. It's magnificent. It's a space in heaven where you will truly be happy. You will spend most of your eternal life in heaven, and you will ask to come to earth so you can improve yourself, so you can rise from level to the next higher level in heaven. Anyway, stay tuned for part 2, and I will see you in a bit. God bless.